Hey there, my name is Jaron Schneider, and I'm the co-host of the PetaPixel Podcast, a show that we host here every week. But this week we have something special. This is a bonus episode where I got to sit down and talk with Doug Mills, the photographer for the New York Times who just won his third Pulitzer Prize, this one for his series of photos of Donald Trump during the attempted assassination last year. This is the one where he actually captured the speeding bullet as it went behind his head, and you can see it in that frame. So we're going to talk a lot about what it was like to take that picture and the kind of emotions that come with how terrible that experience was and the fact that, well, he just won the Pulitzer for it. So that's a lot of conflicting feelings there. Doug is an absolutely incredible interview, really nice guy to talk to. The interview is a little over 40 minutes long. Hopefully you enjoy it. Leave your comments below. Let us know what you think. Until then, we'll see you on a regular episode on our scheduled time next week. Enjoy. This episode is brought to you by Tamron and their excellent 18-300 f3.5 to 5.6 III-A VC VXD lens. You may have heard it's available for Sony E-mount and Fujifilm X-mount, but did you know it's also coming soon to Canon RF and Nikon Z-mounts? Suddenly, Nikon and Canon photographers can see what their friends on those other mounts have been so happy with. This is an impressive lens that offers an outstanding 16.7x zoom ratio, making it perfect for capturing everything from wide-angle landscapes to telephoto close-ups. Whether you're shooting architecture, wildlife, or portraits, this lens has you covered. That gigantic zoom ratio doesn't mean compromised performance either. It features a special coating and a design that helps minimize chromatic aberration and ghosting, ensuring vibrant, clear images with impressive detail. It's not just versatile, it's reliable too. Tamron's vibration compensation ensures sharp, steady images, even in low-light conditions or when handheld, making it ideal for travel and spontaneous photography. And that VXD autofocus motor, well, they provide fast and precise performance with smooth, near-silent operation for both video and stills. Weighing just 620 grams, that's approximately 1.37 pounds, it's lightweight and portable, a perfect travel companion for any photographer or videographer on the go. As mentioned, the 18-300 f3.5 5.6 III-A VC VXD lens is available for Sony and Fujifilm and soon for Canon and Nikon mirrorless cameras. Pick one up today and get a $100 instant savings. Shop now at tamron-americas.com or check the link in the description below. Thanks to Tamron for sponsoring this special episode of the PetaPixel Podcast. And I'm joined by Doug Mills of the New York Times. He is a Pulitzer Prize winning photographer, new Pulitzer Prize, as well as some from the past. Thanks for joining me, Doug. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me.
Darren, I'm happy to be here. I appreciate you having me. Look forward to this conversation, man.
Well, I got a bunch of questions here. We'll start with basically congrats on winning.
Thank
what
you.
Is this, your third Pulitzer?
My third Pulitzer, the first two were with the Associated Press. They were both team Pulitzers, and this is the first solo one.
Wow. So that's a remarkable accomplishment. So you just said that right there. The first two were a team. This is a solo. How does this compare to your other two, personally, for you?
I mean, obviously, it's an honor to get this award, no matter whether you're in a team or individually. But yeah, this one feels a lot more special, a lot more rewarding, a lot more uplifting. You know, it's just it's an incredible achievement, you know, and I'm really honored to be, you know, presented with this award by the Pulitzer Committee, because I know they looked at a lot of great work this year, and again, I'm really thankful for it. But it does feel amazing.
So for those who might not have read your article in the New York Times, I got a couple of questions here that kind of go back to that original, the series that you captured. So like, could you briefly tell us the experience of capturing that series and what was going through your head as everything transpired?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where there were 4 still photographers allowed in the buffer zone. We were traveling with the president, and we get, 10 minutes down in that little buffer zone that it's called. It's an area right around the stage. And At about 5 minutes in, the president had been making some remarks, and I was trying to work around the stage and get different angles. The light was just really starting to get nice. It was like 6 o'clock in the evening in a summer night, but it was incredibly hot. And I had been there since 5:30 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
So it was a long day. And, it was just one of those events where, I don't own a gun. I've never heard an AR-15 fired before. So when I first heard the pops, when he gestured to his right, I thought maybe fireworks or a motorcycle or something. And then when I realized he went down so quickly, he looked at his hand, went down, and it was, then you're running around hearing, active shooter, get down, get down. And I'm looking around me and I see some of the other staff members, a couple cameramen that were in the buffer zone. They were already taking cover. And, the president fell out of my sight. He went behind, the protective Kevlar that is built around him on the stage. Everywhere they speak, there's a built-in, kind of like barrier, but obviously it's not that tall, it's not that high, but he went down behind that. So my first instinct was to go towards it because I wanted to see what was going on. I wanted to see how badly he'd been shot. And it was, just trying to get around there and then running around. And all of a sudden in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, he's been down there. We heard the first four shots. Then we heard four more. I never heard the Secret Service bullet that actually killed the assassination, the guy who was trying to assassinate the president. I never heard that shot because it was much more muffled. But after that, when we heard all clear, it was like, okay, then they've got to get him out of here. They've got to get him into an SUV that he came into. So they always have an egress for the president to get off, and the Secret Service has that built into every event that they do. So I ran over to the right, and then as I ran over to the right, I could see them trying to lift him up and get him onto his feet again. And I had no idea how, badly he had been shot, whether he'd been shot somewhere else. I mean, much like when Ronald Reagan was shot, you saw him get in the car, you didn't know he was shot. But on this one, when I looked back at the frames real quick and I could see him grabbing his ear, I was like, oh my gosh, he has been shot. And then the next thing you know, they're lifting him up. He gives that fist pump, and then they take him off, and and then whisked him away right into the SUV.
At what point did you realize that you'd actually captured that bullet in the air?
Jared, it was one of those things where I realized I had captured all the moments earlier, the fist pump and the blood on his ear. And it wasn't until, and I was sending, pictures from my camera through a Sony device, a new transmitter, and sending them in, under 5 seconds for each picture. And then after I sent the first few in, someone from the desk called me and said, how are you doing? How are you doing? I'm like, I'm fine. I'm still filing. I'm only filing from my camera. I can't get to my laptop right now. We're in a secure area. And so then I got a call from one of our reporters, Maggie Haberman. It was like, Maggie, she was like, Doug, where the hell are you? I was like, I'm here with the president. And she said, tell me everything you know, everything you saw. And she said, I'm hearing from the White House right now that he was not shot. And I said, Maggie, that does not appear to be what's going on in my pictures. And she said, well, there's rumors on the internet that he was, there was shrapnel from the teleprompter that hit him and hit him on his ear. And when he fell to the ground, he fell into that glass. I said, Maggie, I'm looking directly at the teleprompters. I can see it on my camera too. There's no teleprompter that was hit. He's definitely been shot. She said, why do you say that? I said, well, I'm looking at the frames where he's, he grimaces and then he grabs his ear, and then he looks at his ear and sees the blood on his ear and he goes down. And she was like, holy shit, really? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, okay, I'm going with it. And so then we were, then it was updating the story. My quotes were in there. And really then after that moment, I get a call from the desk saying, hey, do you have any pictures of him actually, when he was speaking, when he was shot at? And I said, oh yeah, shit, let me go look. So I went back through my, camera, and I'm looking at him and I'm like, oh yeah. And again, I had a wide angle lens on. So I was zooming in, and then I said, yeah, I can see him grimacing going down. Let me send these in. So I sent them all in, not seeing, the high res or, a full blown up picture. And then the desk called back and said, hey, one of our people in art production who's putting together a triptych just noticed that you have a bullet flying behind his head. And I was like, holy shit, are you kidding me? And she said, no, 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 I'm going to text you the photo right away. So she texted me the photo, and I looked at it. I was like, oh my gosh. I said, but hold on, let me go in and get this was a JPEG file. Before we put this out, before we, jump on this bandwagon, let me make sure that it's on the raw file too. So then I went from there, pleaded with the Secret Service agent who was there and the staffer to let us go back out into the where my laptop was, which where the main camera riser was. And again, we were right after the shooting. We were standing there after the limo went away, or the SUV. The Secret Service came up and told, the other four photographers that Anna, Jabin, and Vucci said, hey, you're standing in my crime scene, man. You got to get out of here. So they took us into this off stage area. So that's where I was doing most of my filing. And then by the time I got to my laptop, I opened it up, put the raw file in, and my heart was pounding out of my chest. And so then when I opened it up in raw and looked at it, I was like, oh my God. So I called, the desk and said, Jen, it's here. She said, send me every frame you have. So then I was, in the parking lot sending every frame I could. And then I was in shock. Believe me,
Yeah.
it was to see that and to think that 8 thousandths of a second could stop a bullet was pretty incredible.
Yeah, you actually, like, we did a story on this not long, probably that day, if not just a couple hours after, and we reported that you'd said you'd never been part of something so horrific, and then you just also had feared being in a situation like that. So those are very strong emotions one way. How do those balance with those that come with winning a Pulitzer because of it?
Yes, I mentioned that in my remarks in New York that it's tragic that somebody lost their life, and someone else in the audience, a supporter for the president, was severely, two or three were severely injured. Some of them still are fighting, those injuries now. And, obviously I'm thankful that the president was not more seriously injured. And, but it's one of those things where as a news photographer, you're thrown into things and you come upon things that you never expect that are dangerous, and it's like going into a horrible hurricane. When I went into Katrina, I felt the same feeling of seeing people who had died and thinking, here I am but I'm photographing them because that's my job, but I'm also trying to show people, our readers, what's happening and how it happened, and real time, moments. And those are something that as a photojournalist, we're asked to do. And that's part of my job.
Yeah. So, shifting gears a little bit,
Sure.
thinking personally about this, do you think the photos that won both the Pulitzer, so that set of photos, that whole group, and then you also won the White House Correspondents Association Award for a different photo this year.
Correct. Yes.
Do you think those are your best photos? Like, that is to say, are they the ones that stick out most strongly in your mind if you were to pick Doug's best photos of the year?
Yeah. The White House Correspondents Association, there was a lot of confusion online and from other photographers. That contest judges pictures just of the current president for from January 1st to December 31st.
Mm-hmm.
So any picture that was made of Joe Biden during his, that year, 2024, was eligible. No pictures. I even asked the WHCA if I could enter anything of Trump. And the response was, well, he's not the current president. So no, aren't our rules, it says the current president. So the picture that I took of Biden that won, it wasn't probably the best photo I'd taken of the year, but I think it captured, just the subtleties of covering Joe Biden. We didn't see him a lot. He was tough to photograph. He's not nearly as photogenic as Trump or Obama or any of the other presidents that I've covered. And the access to him was really, really tight, even during the campaign. So trying to get something different. And I feel like the judges, from what I've heard, the judges felt like he had such a solemn year. He lost. I mean, there were other pictures that I entered of. There was a picture I took during the campaign that I thought was going to win. It did have Joe Biden in it. He was, on television addressing the nation that, that he was dropping out, and Donald Trump was watching him on his plane. And I thought that was going to be the picture, even though it had both presidents in it. And it did, according to the rules, have Joe Biden in it. So, yeah, the uniqueness of the Pulitzer win. There were a lot of great photos taken that day. There were a lot. I mean, Evan Vucci's picture, Anna Moneymaker's picture, David had really nice pictures. And everybody had a different angle, which was really incredible. And everybody's won, thankfully, different awards for different pictures. And this, I think the Pulitzer, Prize was awarded because, I was the only one who had the bullet, and I was the only one that was able to capture that moment, and also the picture of him looking in his ear and all of that. Those moments, were not made by anybody else, and that's not disrespectful to Evan or Anna or Jabin or anybody who was there, because I just got lucky. I mean, my instincts were right. I was firing the camera at the right time, and thankfully, I made the pictures that I did.
Before I asked you about, you mentioned that the fist bump in the air photo. And before I mentioned that, there's something I'm still a little bit confused about the White House thing, because they told you those rules. Like, it has to be the sitting with the acting president.
Correct.
But the honorable mention picture,
I know,
doesn't seem to follow that rule. So I think that might be why there's so much confusion.
I agree. Yeah, Jim Watson's picture.
Yeah.
Which is a similar picture to a lot of us had the same similar picture on the side. And I never thought even to enter that because, Joe Biden wasn't in the picture. So I don't know how much of, the rules were read to the people who were judging. But yeah, it's very distinctive pictures, very different. And I think, that's exactly why there's a lot of confusion, because the runner-up picture was Jim Watson's, which is an incredible picture, great moment from the campaign. And I understand that confusion, but I went back and looked, and it does say current president and not a campaign picture.
Yeah. So they must have, it's rough.
They must have just loved that picture. And I'm surprised Jim even entered it, because Jim, because even I think Chip Somadavia from Getty even asked me, like 3 weeks or 4 weeks before the contest, we were sitting around the White House, and he was like, "So tell me about that. Are we allowed to put any campaign stuff in there?" I said, "Well, yeah. My understanding, looking at the rules, it's any campaign picture of Joe Biden is fine, because it's basically says the current president of the United States. It doesn't say former president or presidential candidate." So I think that's where the confusion came. So yeah, that I can understand that. I get it, and I understand the somewhat criticism that my picture was getting blowback. I got some weird text about it. People hit me on Twitter about it. So,
I mean, you didn't pick your own picture to win. So I don't know why they're coming to you with complaints.
Yeah. But, well, you know how contests are. Contests can be, very subjective, and it all depends on what day and what the news is, and all it takes is one dominant judge to say this, 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 and this. And sometimes a lot of other people will, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't care about this category. I like the sports, or I like the feature, or the hard news. I don't care about the presidential stuff.
So since we're speaking about this, like the idea, like the why there's so much like blowback, as you said, regarding that win. And then also you can look at the Pulitzer, how they kind of treated it too. There's this idea that there is this one iconic picture, this one iconic frame that might be one of the best frames, singular frames as far as breaking news goes. And that's, the fist in the air, blood on his cheek sort of thing. And when that wasn't included in the White House Awards, the Correspondents' Awards, and it also was sort of like put near the end and not shown in the live screen of the Pulitzer Awards, it just seems like people get this idea that is being suppressed in some way. What do you think about people who believe that?
No, I mean, I think I mean, Evan Vucci's picture is iconic. There's no question about it. That picture with the flag above him. Everybody had the fist pump. Everybody had a different angle. Everybody had a different, like I said, just, a moment. I didn't see the all the other photos that you're talking about, but I do remember, it's no different than when Ron Edmonds from the Associated Press won for his assassination attempt of Ronald Reagan. There were a number of pictures in there. There wasn't just one, but there were a number of pictures in there that put him over the edge to win that award. And I feel like that's probably what happened with my
Yeah.
selection. And I'm thrilled that they put in more than one, because it's so hard to judge breaking news story with one image unless it's you know unless you don't have everything else. Like, you don't have the bullet,
Right.
you don't have his incredibly bloody ear. I did have the fist pump. And the
Hmm.
ironic thing is that while I was as a photographer who studies his craft, the Sony camera that I was using, the A1 camera, has a crop sensor in it. So if I had, which I had my 24 millimeter lens on, so when the bullets started flying and I ran around to the side, I realized, okay, my 7200 is too tight for this. I better go with the stay with the 24. It was kind of chaotic. So I hit the crop mode to try and zoom in where the president was on, where all the Secret Service were on top of him. And then I basically, never took it off the crop mode. So when I went back to get him coming off the stage, I still had it in the basically from a 24 almost to a 48 millimeter or 40 millimeter lens. So I didn't have all of the surroundings that Evan and Jabin had.
Yeah.
But that is one of those things that is just like. But I had, it was tight, it was clean, didn't crop any heads off or hands off or anything like that. So one of those things in the moment. And then when it was over, I was like, oh shit, I was still in crop mode.
Yeah. Uh, just to let you know, that happens to us all the time. Like, we'll do that. We're in crop mode. Crap. Like, we did a whole series actually in Japan earlier this year. We were trying to
Did
do
you
a
really?
test. Yeah, we are doing a test on something, and I needed it. It's a full frame lens, and Chris just forgot that he was in crop mode the whole time.
Yeah.
So, because we had just
So there you
tested.
go. I was
Yeah,
in
it
crop
happens to
mode,
everyone.
and yeah, and I wish I had. In hindsight, it was just like it is what it is. I wouldn't change a thing. I
Hmm.
may go wider, but again, we were all, four of us were all jammed up in there. Nobody was pushing anybody. We were just moving with the pack, watching them come down off the stage. Trying to stabilize the president.
So since we're talking about gear, I'm gonna shift and we can go that, and we'll go back to this other stuff at the end.
Sure.
But what I've got here is I kind of wanted to mention this to you. I don't know if you feel this way, but photographers these days tend to be so gear focused. It's always like equipment. So like for you, how does new gear how does that matter to you? What do you care about? How does it impact your work?
New equipment is the lifeline of us, I think, and to have the greatest technology in your hand. And I always, I talk of, we have a trade. Photographers work in a trade where it can be considered a blue collar job. That camera is our tool. And we have so many tools in our basket or in our tool bag to choose from. And when new technology comes out, I am the first one to raise my hand and say, please, can I try it? Can I try it? Can I try it? Because, I've been around for a long time. I mean, I started in 1983 covering the White House, and we were, shooting film and running the film out to the gate, the Northwest Gate. There was a guy on a motorcycle there, just take off, back to the office, process the film and everything. So from that day on, as soon as the first digital wave started coming, I wanted to embrace it, because I remember my former chief photographer, Bob Doherty at AP, said, listen, kid, if you don't keep up with technology, you're going to be left behind. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So every time there was something new, a new lens, a new camera, I wanted to try it. And I think that's something that has, really, really, and I honestly mean this, has has pushed my career beyond the years that I thought it may be. I mean, I'm 65. I try and stay in shape, physical shape. I'm always trying to do the right thing at work my ass off. Great. I pride myself in my work ethic. And that's something I learned from Bob Doherty, Ron Edmonds, other colleagues of mine who really staged their, or went after their craft and did whatever they could. So when somebody comes out with a new camera, a new lens, and when Sony approached me 8 or 9 years ago, maybe 8 years ago with the mirrorless, my God, after 3 hours of using that camera, I said, I can't give this back. I mean, this is a game changer. This entire mirrorless system focuses faster, it's lighter, it's sharper. Everything about it made me, do whatever I could to switch. And I don't regret 1 minute of it because they continue to produce new equipment. They continue to produce, devices that I can transmit my photos from. And that day in Butler, my gosh, if I had not been up on the new technology with the new Sony transmitter device,
Yeah.
I would have been, in trouble. I think Evan and I were the only ones who had those, and we were really the first ones to get our pictures out. And we looked at what was the best cell coverage that day, put the right SIMs in them, and to be able to send a picture from my camera in less than 5 seconds when there are 10 or 15,000 people on the same, cell towers. That's what makes the difference.
For those listening, what Doug's talking about is the PDT FP1, which is not, it doesn't really roll off the tongue.
That's why I'm struggling with it. But I know it's like the incredible device that Sony's made.
Yeah, it's this little transmitter with a screen on it that basically allows you to send files wirelessly over a 5G network. And a lot of press folks use it. And obviously it was a huge impact here. You shot this series with an A1, right? The original A1.
Correct.
So what are your thoughts on the new A1? And have you used the A9, the new A9 as well with the global shutter?
Yes, I've used the A9. I've also used the A1 Mark II, which I used it recently at the Masters. I covered the Masters, and for sports, wow. I didn't think the A1 could get any better, and then they, shipped me an A1 Mark II, and just because it has so many different, the file sizes are bigger, the chip allows you to have this small little focus button, which is something I had always asked the folks at Sony. Can you make that focusing square smaller? So if you're trying to find somebody in a crowd, or especially for golf, trying to get through people, or especially at Augusta where you're not allowed to go into the ropes, everything is behind all the patrons that are there, so you're struggling sometimes to look through. And so when you can get that small focusing track, that's been a game changer also. So both of those cameras are amazing, and I feel like the A1 Mark II transmits the photos faster, connects faster to a secure FTP. So yeah, again, it's new technology. I can't wait to get it in my hands because it energizes me as a photographer. Anytime you get a new piece of equipment, you love using it. And I went, frankly, from using zoom cameras most of my life, 24 to 70, 70 to 200. And now I'm using a lot of primes. And now, then lo and behold, Sony comes out with a 50 to 150 lens f2.
Have you used it yet?
I just got one, and I'm taking it to Saudi Arabia next week with Trump. So I can't wait to use it.
It's a great lens, so I'm excited for you.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, it's remarkably good, like across the board. Yeah, it's like perfect optically, so you don't have to. There's no like digital correction, so what you see is like actual. It's very impressive. It's a really sharp lens across.
That's good to know.
Yeah, so you can rely on it, I think.
I just got it, so I'm going to pull it out of the box today and start playing with it. So I look forward to
that's awesome.
Seeing what it'll do.
Do you think you could have captured the series that you captured that won the Pulitzer this year 5-10 years ago with that equipment back then?
No, I don't think so. One, I don't think any of those cameras went up to 8,000ths of a second. I think the highest back then may have been 5,000. Also, optically, shooting that on a 24 took quite a big blow up. The pixel resolution on it would have never held up. I mean, would have never. You know, 52 megabyte file is what that was cropped from, and the files back then, even they were maybe 20 megs. But also just the reaction time on the camera. Yeah, so I don't think that would have been possible.
So not only has gear changed a lot through your career, but so too have how people viewed photos and to a significant degree the political landscape itself.
Yes.
Can you explain how the changing behaviors of news consumers and how people view politicians has or has not impacted your career over that time?
Yeah, I think social media has changed a ton. And I think, photographers basically growing up, throughout my whole career, we took our pictures and then Facebook came along and people started putting them on Facebook. If they weren't in print somewhere, they ended up on Facebook or somewhere else. And then all of a sudden Instagram comes around and now it's like, boom, every photographer has their own canvas to fill up. They can fill up, put a portfolio on there every day and good or bad, and the unfortunate part of it when we, somebody who covers a lot of politics, I put up, pictures of politicians and somebody's always, critical of it, no matter what. There's both sides of it. When I'd really prefer they just say they like the picture or they don't. You don't have to, jump down whether it's Biden's throat or Obama's throat or Trump's throat, just slamming them politically. Just look at it for what it is. It's an image that was taken by a news photographer, and that's one of those things that is, it's hard to. Sometimes it's hard to read that stuff when they're attacking me for or my colleagues. We all go through it for doing our job, or just because we're covering a Republican president doesn't mean that we are a Republican, or if we're covering a Democrat, doesn't mean that we're a Democrat. And we are doing our job. We're trying to show you in the public who don't have access to the Oval Office or don't have access to a room or the Air Force One or anything like that, that we can, take pictures. And, these phones are, our lifeline now. And look at it. Everybody looks at their phone all day, and they're 9 out of 10 times they're looking at images, and then there's stories, And what's remarkable is how many people that are subscribers, over the 11 and a half, 12 million people that subscribe to the New York Times. I think it's around 80% of them are consuming it on a phone. And what fits in a phone is vertical and square photos. So it's one of those things where the business has changed, photography has changed because of that. And but I don't, I don't regret any of the stuff that I'm doing. And I don't mind the criticism. It's fine, but it's, some of it can get personal, and I just don't respond to that. But anytime you post a picture, somebody's got to be a critic, and that's fine. That's fine.
I mean, even when we post stories, it's like, I'm just reporting the news. I don't know
Right.
why you're coming at me for saying that I've got some sort of slant. I'm literally reporting what happened. I'm sorry that bothers you.
Right. That's exactly how I feel. Exactly how I feel. Because, we're paid to do a job. You're paid to be a photographer. We're paid to be a news photographer. And that's what we do.
Yeah.
Yes. Somebody doesn't look good today, or somebody, did something that nobody else likes, or there was inappropriate. We're still going to photograph it no matter what.
So a lot of the discussion surrounding your winning images has been extremely partisan on this note. So, like, what do you think about the politicization? Is that how you say it? Politicization?
Yeah.
Boy, I can't get that out of my mouth. Of photojournalism. And relatedly, what do you believe a photojournalist's principal responsibilities are when taking photos of political figures? Like, where does Doug Mills, the photographer, end and Doug Mills, the person, begin? Is it ever while you're looking through the viewfinder?
Great question, man. Because I think about that a lot when I see other photographers work or hear them speak privately. My job is to be as apolitical as I can each and every day. That is my mission, to be the apolitical photographer. And I think all of my colleagues do the same thing. And yes, it's very polarized. And I am, I covered Donald Trump's campaign this past year because I was asked to. I had covered him in 2016. I covered Hillary's campaign in 2015. So I was not on Donald Trump's campaign, and really didn't meet him until, he became president, or during the transition. So we bounce around from Republican to Democrat. Our work doesn't change. Our job is to, again, open the eyes of people who cannot be there to see what we're doing, and to cover news without a slant, to not look for a gotcha moment with the president or something that's unflattering. We cover, I've had plenty of pictures of Donald Trump's hair straight up in the air, during his, first 4 years. I'd post those and get slammed. And then I'd post a picture of him, doing something that was really cool, and still get, people have their opinions. And that's basically what social media has done. And that's fine. If people need to release their energy or their feelings to the public about how they stand on something, that's their right. I have no problem with that. But, I'm sometimes, hurt by the attacks personally. If I screwed up an assignment, yeah, drill me, man. You missed that, or somebody else had a better angle on it. Man, have at me. That's my learning. That's how I learn. And every photographer in journalism needs to be criticized, or be self-critical of themselves. Excuse me, critical of themselves for not having a good day or a bad day. Not everybody's batting 1,000. We know that. None of us can. But we, like myself, I try and go to the White House prepared every day. I've been going through those gates on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue since 1983. And every time I walk through there, it's an honor. I mean, I'm not there by accident. The New York Times wants me to be there. I love my job. I love going to work in the morning. It's, grueling as hell sometimes, but it's what we do. And it is disappointing that it has become so political, but so is our country now. I mean, I never felt like my career, 10 years ago, 20 years ago I never felt like the country was this divided. And I think a lot of it has just because people have more voices now. They have more voices or more platforms to put their voice somewhere and to tell people how they feel. And that's fine. I think that's great. If that keeps them from getting frustrated and doing something dangerous, that's great. Yeah, have at it. But yeah, it's unfortunate, but that's where we are. I don't see it changing anytime soon. I'll tell you that. Unfortunately, or fortunately.
Just a couple more here.
Sure.
You mentioned earlier you shot golf. You have extensive sports photography experience. So, how does that differ from the hard news photojournalism that you're doing? And are there any overlaps and transferable skills between the two genres?
Yeah, I think sports was my first passion. I mean, I played sports in high school.
What'd you play?
I played basketball, football, and a little baseball.
All right.
Yeah, so I did it all. I probably, let's see, I don't know how far down in the weeds you want to go, but I played high school basketball, baseball, and football, and I ended up not playing football my senior year. Kid transferred in from Texas who was a hell of a lot bigger than me and a hell of a lot better quarterback. So I was playing basketball. I was a starting point guard, co-captain on the team. So yeah, it was. I love it. So when I started, I was, believe it or not, I know this is hard to believe, but when I was in high school, I was photographing high school basketball with a 110 camera. You familiar with a 110 camera? The little, it's about that big, has like 12 exposures in it, and, no bigger than,
Yes.
a little bit taller than this.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would go to these games with a little flash on there. I'd be down, taking pictures with a 110 camera. And then I'd rush off, the next morning, Saturday morning, and cover a Friday night game, go to Saturday morning and drop my film off at the, I think it was a People's Drug Store or something like that. And that's where I ended up getting one of my first jobs, was basically so I could get a discount on processing my film.
Boy, you
I
make me
swear.
look so spoiled. I was shooting with a Canon 20D when I was in high school. That was
What?
significantly better.
Yeah. Yeah, a 110 camera, Google it. But yeah, and so that's where my passion started with sports. And then once I got my mom bought me a Canon AE1 program when I was
Nice.
in high school. At the I think it was a junior, and started. Then I took a couple photo classes at something called the Arlington Career Center, which was an incredible program for anybody who was trying to pick up a trade. I went there for 3 hours a day from my freshman year to my senior year to study photography, and it was just incredible. And I was at my home school for math, English, and government, and then I'd get on a bus and be bussed over to this career center, which is still open here in Arlington County and thriving. And but then I started volunteering at the local newspaper, the Journal newspapers, and then I got up the courage to go talk to the sports editor there and begged him for a chance to shoot a high school game. And he said, "Listen, we pay either $5 or $10 for a photo if we get it published, but you're going to have to do all the work. You're going to basically have to shoot it, bring it here to the newspaper after the game, process the film, make a print, and then leave it on my desk." And it was a biweekly newspaper at the time, so I had a few hours to play with. But then I'd go back to school, or go, then I did it after college, or when I got in college, and I was doing the same thing, and then I finally got hired. But yeah, I mean, I had Cliff Owen was an incredible mentor to me during those times. He was at the Atlanta School of Journalism, and he was a part-time photographer there. So he took me under his wing when I came in with my first roll of film, and started shooting sports. So I think shooting sports and politics, they're both, have key moments. They have one moment during a photo op or during a game that everybody remembers. And I think that's something that has honed me in to be reactive and maybe keep the shutter down, because sports does that to you. But I think having that base, as a sports photographer, was incredible. I had another mentor, Larry Rubenstein, who was a UPI photographer and then went on to work at Reuters. Told me one time, "Kid, listen, if you can shoot sports, you can shoot anything. Just remember that. So keep shooting sports, because you'll get hired to do anything after you can do sports, because you're framing in unusual situations. You're trying to frame things that you have no control of. So then when you go to a portrait, you have complete control of an environment. You can brain the frame." He used to always say, "Brain the frame, like look through every part of the frame and make it work. Make me want to look around that picture." So I've been real lucky to have great mentors.
How do you determine when you've got a successful photo? Like, what is the necessary ingredient? Like this
Yeah.
list of things you're looking for a great breaking news photo.
I think again, just that one moment during an event or something that's really unusual. Darren, when we're in like the Oval Office or the cabinet room, and we only have a few minutes to shoot, though it's very different with Donald Trump. We go, a typical president would have us into the Oval Office or cabinet room sometimes for 2 minutes, maybe 5 to 10. We go into an Oval Office spray with President Trump, and we can be in there anywhere from 30 to 50 minutes.
Hmm.
Cabinet room can be 90 minutes. So that allows us to get around the room and look at different angles. And when you find that one sweet moment during an event or that really nice light, sometimes you overwork it if you have time. But when you do have it, it really feels good. And it's that peak moment from every event. Especially in politics too. And then there are moments that you take where they may not be the news picture of the day, but I know damn well the New York Times is going to want them in 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days from now for another story about the president or somebody else who was in the room. And that's the fun thing about being in there so long, is you can look around and photograph other cabinet members and that are going to be in the news eventually.
Last one. I'm sure there are people listening right now who look at what you do and like, man, I want to get there someday.
Right.
What are the steps they could take now, early on, that will really help them reach that goal?
Don't give up. I think I think that's an overused term. If you really want to get in this business and you really want to, put in the hours and all the time that it takes to be a good photographer, it's an incredible career. And not giving up. And I think if you're a young photographer in college and you're looking to get in this business, you got to bang on doors to get an internship. Internships are the key to meeting other photographers in the business, key to getting more experience, key to really becoming an adult in the business because you're dealing with people as a photographers have to be able to interact with their subjects, especially if you work at a newspaper. So many times you're going in, you're meeting somebody who's never met before to do a portrait, or going to a story with them. Same when you're photographing a subject on the streets. Sometimes you have to have the personality and the drive to get involved and hone your craft and talk to other photographers. I mean, I try and mentor as many photographers as I can now, and I try and have photographers shadow me at the White House whenever I can. I have somebody who's waiting to shadow me probably in about 2 weeks. After I've had 3 people shadow me already this year, and we're only in May. So I enjoy doing that, but you have to make contact with other photographers, ask to shadow them, ask to be, to talk to them, to show them your work. And one of the most important things is being able to understand as a young photographer, you may think you're great, you may think you're doing the right thing, but also learn to be criticized, learn to take, a little, take a minute when a photographer says, you know what? You really should have done this, or did you look at this, or did you look at that? Don't look at it as a personal attack. Look at it as a learning experience. I mean, the guy I'm talking about, Cliff Owen, the first time I ever had somebody really jump down my throat, he sent me to a baseball game, and I had to go photograph 3 baseball players to get headshots, portraits of them, and I completely screwed it up. I didn't think, I was so, I was like, literally 21 years old, and I'm walking onto a minor league baseball field, and the coach didn't want me there, the players didn't want me there, and I'm saying, all right, I just got to get a couple of headshots of you guys, and I had like poles and shit growing out of the back of the head, and I was so, just looking at them in awe that here I am taking their picture. I never thought about the background. And then when I learned brain the frame, and when Cliff said, listen, look at this picture, look what you had total control here. If they weren't going to move, you have to move. Look to the right. That pole's not behind his head over there. That tree's not growing out of the back of his shoulder. So look around. So, and I took that with like, oh my gosh, he's right. And then when the first assignment I got for UPI, I walked into another photographer, Larry Rubenstein, and Valerie Hotchkins invited me to shoot a football game. And they said, come into the office. And I went into the office, and I was 22 years old. And I walked into the office, and the photo editor was a guy from New York, Hugo Wessel. And he looked at me and he goes, kid, what are you doing in here? I was like, well, I'm waiting for Larry and, Valerie. I'm going to go shoot an assignment with him. He was like, no. You're way too young. You're way too young. Come back and work with them when you have more experience. I was like, well, they're trying to help me out. I was like, nope, kid, you're too young. Not happening. So I was like, oh, gosh. So I basically went out in the hallway, sat down and cried for a few minutes. And then Larry walked in and goes, what the hell's wrong? I said, Hugo just threw me out of the office because he said I'm just too young and inexperienced to be in the UPI office. He was like, okay, wait out here. I'm going to go talk to him. Let's go shoot the game. Shot the game. Had some really nice pictures from a college football game. And Larry went in and showed Hugo the pictures and said, this is that kid you sent out of here. This is the kid who wants to do what we're doing. You can't be that hard on him. He goes, he's too goddamn young. I don't want him in here. And so it took a while for me to get past that. I was being criticized by him. I was too young. I didn't have the experience. that was true, but I was trying to get past that. And I remember Larry saying, you have this great sports portfolio, but you don't have any news in this thing. Go get a scanner, buy a scanner, start chasing ambulances, start chasing fires. You got to get it. So I literally went out and I went to Radio Shack, bought a scanner, and this is back then, I had an earpiece in, and I walked around with that thing, and every time there was a fire or something, I was on it, and it helped me out for, there was a plane crash in Washington, D.C. that basically, threw me into a next level. I was listening to it on the scanner. It was snowing. If you look up Air Florida crash that, hit the 14th Street Bridge and went into the water, I was one of the first people there. I would have not been there had Larry not told me to pick up a scanner and start getting breaking news. And so those pictures were, great. It helped me get my news judgment going and start thinking more about news and not just doing sports. So, yeah, I mean, it's an incredible way to start. And I think young photographers should never give up and always push yourself, and don't be afraid to ask stupid questions. That's one of the things I ask art fellows and art interns at the New York Times. There are no stupid questions. You can ask anything. If you don't know and you try and pretend that you know and you fail, you're failing yourself because you're not asking for advice. All the photographers at the White House Press Corps are more than willing to lend you a hand, to tell you if you have a question. If you're afraid to ask me, go ask a younger photographer who's been here a little bit longer, than you have. So it's, don't give up. I mean, I'm telling you, get in the business. It's an incredible career. I love every bit of it. And my daughter's even, doing it as a side hustle now and loves it. And that thrills the hell out of me.
Doug, that was exceptional. It's been an honor talking to you, man. Thank you so much for sitting down with me. You're a fount of knowledge. Really appreciate it.
Darren, I'm delighted that you had me on. And I hope you'll have me back some other time. This was fun. Thank you.
Would love to. Thanks, Doug.
Great questions.